Top of the morning, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Tuesday, August 19th, 2025. I'm James Azar, host and Chief Information Security Officer, bringing you the top cybersecurity news I'm paying attention to as a cybersecurity practitioner this morning. So we're going to get right into the program. But before we do, we have a tradition on this show. Grab my double espresso. You'll grab whatever you're drinking. Put it in the comments. You send it to me in a DM, whatever it is. It's good. And we cheers to our coffee this morning. We do because as practitioners, we're powered. We're powered by caffeine and bourbon. Caffeine and bourbon. I'd say those are the two things that power cybersecurity professionals. So with that being said, coffee cup cheers, y'all. Something tells me I'm going to get a hate message. I'm not powered by it. I like my beer, James. But anyways, with that being said, Allianz Life is now reporting that 1.1 million customers were impacted by the data breach that occurred just a few weeks ago. The attack attributed to Scattered Spider and Shiny Hunters. These are two cybercrime groups that are working together, with some reports claiming that they have merged. We talked about that on the show last week, where they may have become like Shiny Spider, if I think that's right. The cyber criminals did conduct a large-scale campaign based on social engineering, targeting Salesforce instances of some major companies like Allianz Life, Adidas, Cisco, Dior, Louis Vuitton, Google, Air France, and KLM, and even Workday that we talked about here on the show yesterday. They recently created a Telegram channel where they're leaking some of the stolen data, presumably from companies that are not given into their extortion attempts. The attackers claim to have leaked 2.8 million records stolen from Allianz Lives. However, once you kind of get into it and you start to look at the records, you realize it's 1.1 million unique records that contain name, email addresses, dates of birth, phone numbers, and physical addresses. From Have I Been Pawned said 72% of the exposed email addresses were already impacted by previously disclosed data breaches, which brings up really why I brought up this story. So Allianz Life had this issue, and Salesforce has been compromised. But this is where I think regulation in the US is really lackluster. And not only is it regulation, but I think also industry has to come together and really make a big push for it. And the push has to come in the idea of, if your data was already compromised in one data breach, then should there be a central data breach notification hub, like at the federal level? Says your information's been compromised. You've already signed up for identity theft protection and all that good stuff. So you can trigger this in 6 months. Because why would you need 17 of them simultaneously? Also, we should redefine what constitutes a reportable event that requires identity theft protection credit monitoring. Is your name, email address, physical address, and phone number really PII? Because that's information that if I walk down the street and just ask people for it, I'd probably get it. Readily available. If I put a drawing in the middle of a shopping mall, and I say enter those 4 pieces of information, people would put them. What's the information that's critical? Dates of birth, social security numbers, personal health information, credit information, all of that. That's the kind of information that really adds to the level of social engineering and complexity in taking over an identity. So should that be the case? Allianz Life's already reported the breach to authorities in the US, but they have yet to say how many people are impacted. Again, 1.1 million seems to be that number, but we'll continue to appraise you as to that. A gambling content and technology giant by the name of Bragg Gaming Group fell victim to a cyber attack over the weekend that impacted some of their internal systems. The incident occurred early Sunday morning, and the gambling solutions provider announced on Monday that based on a preliminary investigation, the company believes the data breach was limited to Bragg's internal computer environment. The company said it immediately took steps to mitigate the attack, and it retained external security experts to assist with response and remediation. Additionally, it had no impact on the company's ability to continue its operations, nor has it any restrictions from accessing any data that's been subject to the cyber attack. Bragg is is a known provider of iGaming content and technology solutions for the gaming industry, including online and real-life casinos. It provides a player account management platform for access to its online gambling portals and diffuse player engagement platform. So they have that there. The UK, in a classic UK move to just kind of go ahead and give up. So the UK is backing down from their legal demand targeting Apple, according to Tulsi Gabbard. In a post on social media, Gabbard said that the UK had agreed to drop its mandate for Apple to provide a backdoor that would have enabled access to its protected encrypted data of American citizens and encroached on our civil liberties. So Director Gabbard's been working on this for quite some time. The tyranny that is coming from some of our allies towards American citizens that they have no jurisdiction thereof. You only have jurisdiction of an American if an American's in your jurisdiction and commits the crime in your jurisdiction. That's typically how freedom and democracies work, unless the UK is slowly encroaching a level where it's no longer that. In February, it came to light that the British government was ordering Apple to provide it with access to the encrypted iCloud accounts. Officials in Westminster have refused to either confirm nor deny such an order. Although the legal demand, formerly known as the Technical Capability Notice, we've talked about this on the show extensively as this kind of come through. Now, apparently, Director Gabbard is saying that through some diplomacy and likely a lot of pressure, the British government said that they will no longer require that. Some of those arrangements that have been between the U.S. and the U.K. on intelligence sharing and helping to tackle terrorism and child sex abuse have safeguards to protect privacy and sovereignty. For example, data access agreements include critical safeguards to prevent the UK and the US from targeting the data of each other's citizens, which is the case. Now, do I trust the US government to safeguard my data and not allow the British government to potentially abuse it? Great question. I don't know that I have an answer for. I don't know that I have an answer for it. I don't know how much I trust them, but nonetheless, this is a good move by the Trump administration and by Director Gabbard to continue to protect the freedoms of Americans, especially our freedom of speech, to criticize something that we see that isn't right. The freedom of speech gives us the ability to criticize our government without any impact. I know people confuse what freedom of speech is all about, but it's a critical part of democracy. When you can criticize your government freely and rightfully, the school of ideas, the diversity of thought is increased, and government is more on its toes, meaning they're less likely to become tyrannical. Although one would argue that over the last 20 years, since 9/11, we've seen some tyranny through some of our laws like the Patriot Act and others. So there's that there as well. Sorry, we checked this and now it's off alignment. All right, so a state-sponsored espionage campaign is targeting foreign embassies in South Korea, deploying the XenoRAT from malicious GitHub repositories. According to Trellix researchers, the campaign has been running since March and is still ongoing. There's been 19 spear phishing attacks against high-value targets in South Korea. The infrastructure manages the playbook of North Korea's actor Comiskey, who experienced its own data breach just last week. The attacks unfold in 3 phases, each with distinct email lures between March and July. The initial probing started in March with an earliest email discovered targeting a Central European embassy. It made a threat actor switch to diplomatic targeting with more complex lures. An email to a Western European embassy pretended to be from a high-ranking EU delegation official about a political advisory meeting at the EU delegation on May 14th. Between June and July, the adversary moved to theme related to U.S.-Korea military alliance. And you kind of see the campaign lifespan. It's on months. It's really, really impressive. The targets were generally European embassies in Seoul, and the themes included fake meeting invites, official letters, event invitations. The lures were contextual, multilingual. They were written in Korean, English, Persian, Arabic, French, and Russian. To make the campaign more convincing, most emails were timed to match real events. So, eye on the trigger, watching the news, using likely AI to put these stuff together. Across all the phases, the delivery method remained the same, with the attacker delivering password-protected archives from Dropbox, Google Drive, or DOM storage devices, which would reduce the risk of email protection systems flagging the messages. Email protection systems, proof point, abnormal. There you go. The archive contained a .lnk file disguised as a PDF. Upon launch, it triggers obfuscated PowerShell code that retrieved the XenoRAT payload from GitHub or Dropbox, securing its persistence with scheduled tasks. And again, to kind of run through the malware there, Trilix underlines that these attacks matched a profile of Comiskey. And again, Comiskey going through their own little breach right now after what happened last week. So satellites. We all love Starlink. Who doesn't love Starlink? I'd want to see the person voting that they don't love Starlink or that don't understand that satellite communication is the way of the future. And I always say that what happens on the battlefield will eventually become civilian hacking tools, meaning what we see Russia and Ukraine, Israel, Iran, US, China use kind of targeting government aspects will eventually, once it becomes moot and it's no longer valid weapon, will just really get kicked off to the side, and it'll get picked up by cyber criminals that take it and use it against organization and people all over the globe. So when I saw this story, it really brought this up. So if you're employed by a company that really relies on satellite communication, this is something you may want to start looking at in terms of risks to the business. So disabling a satellite could have devastation to a bunch of different industries and governments. It could impede the satellite's ability to communicate. You can cause significant disruption. Well, in the Ukraine, the Russians hacked the satellite military system on Victory Day. The satellite systems that were airing TV signals in the Ukraine. So they hacked those satellite signals and then broadcasted the military victory all over the Ukraine in a great psyop. More than 12,000 operating satellites now orbit the planet. They play a critical role not in just broadcasting communication, but also military operations, navigation systems like GPS intelligence gathering, and even economic supply chains. They're also key. They're also key to early launch detection efforts, which can warn of approaching missiles. That makes them a significant national security vulnerability, a prime target for anyone looking to undermine an adversary's economy or military readiness. So Russia, remember, this isn't the first time Russia does this. They targeted Viasat on the eve of their invasion into the Ukraine and the kickoff of the war. They've constantly targeted that. We now see them doing this. So you can obviously understand what is going, like exactly what's happening here and how these satellites could be used for malicious purposes. And it's something we ought to be worried about. Like, I don't know how to address this threat as of yet, right? Like, I haven't dug deep into it, but it's something that I feel like if I worked for an organization that relied on satellite communication for critical, mission critical aspects, if you're like in oil and gas or aviation, this would be something I'd definitely look at and would definitely enter my risk register as something to address and talk about potentially with the board, bringing up these use cases as examples of something that could happen to us and how do we prepare for it. Dozens of SAP NetWeaver instances are susceptible to a compromise after a threat actor released a working exploit that changed 2 critical severity vulnerabilities for code execution. These flaws are CVE 2025-31324. That's got a CVSS score of 10. And CVE 2025-42999 or CVSS score of 9.1. And it's together, they're described as a missing authorization check issue and an insecure deserialization bugs that patched together create kind of a 0-day type of situation. Not a real 0-day, but together you can actually execute code, deploy web shells, and several ransomware groups like Bien Lian and Ransom EXX and some Chinese APTs have been seen already targeting these specific vulnerabilities. Winopsis concluded that it's actually built to chain the known flaws for the execution of arbitrary system commands with admin privileges. In essence, the attackers first used the missing authentication vulnerability to access the critical functionality without authentication, and then they get their malicious payload to the server. They then exploit the deserialization flaw. They deserialize the malicious payload and execute that code with the privilege of the SAP system. So you want to make sure you get this patched up. The maintainers of the Python package index, also known as PyPy or PyPy or whatever you want to call it, has announced that the package manager now checks for expired domains to prevent supply chain attacks. These changes will improve overall account security posture, making it harder for attackers to exploit expired domain names to gain unauthorized access to those accounts, according to Mike Fiedler, the PyPy safety and security engineer at the Python Software Foundation. With the latest update, the intention is to tackle domain resurrection attacks, which occur when actors purchase an expired domain and use it to take control of accounts through password resets. It's said it has unverified over 1,800 email addresses since June of 2025. As soon as the associated domain entered an expiration phase, while this is not a foolproof solution, it helps reduce risk, which is what we're all trying to do. So good job there. The Thai police arrest SMS blasting scammers allegedly hired by a Chinese boss. A white Suzuki driving through Bangkok looked like a normal rental car until police officer trailing it started receiving fake bank alerts on their phones. When officials pulled it over, they found a portable SMS blaster inside, capable of sending thousands of phishing messages a day. Thai police arrested 2 men ages 23 and 25 on August 15th after finding the illegal telecom setup hidden in the car. Not the first time they find it, by the way. Very, very common that the Chinese do this. The SMS blaster imitates a mobile phone tower and can push out messages to every device within a certain physical radius, for example, reaching people walking along a busy street. According to the police, the suspects admitted they were hired by a Chinese boss, marking the second such case in Bangkok this month. Earlier in August, we talked about that. Two Thai men were driving a Mazda with a similar setup. So these are China-linked gangs that were paid up to $100 a day to drive 2 shifts, blasting as many as 10,000 texts daily, police said. They said they were recruited by a Cambodian acquaintance and trained remotely by a Chinese boss who shipped the equipment from abroad. So you kind of see that happening. And the UK sentences a 26-year-old man to 20 months in prison after he pled guilty. The El Tahiri El Mashriki of Rotherham, UK, was arrested in 2022 based on information received from U.S. law enforcement and charged for stealing logs and details of millions of Facebook users hacking websites belonging to the government in Yemen, an Israeli news outlet, and an organization in the U.S. and Canada. El Mashriki, who apparently sympathizes to terrorist organizations, targeted the official government of Yemen, not the Houthis. Said I would make him a Houthi living in the UK. Wow. He deployed tools on Yemeni government websites to scan for username vulnerabilities. He hacked into an Israeli live news accessing admin pages, downloaded the entire site, targeted some faith websites in Canada and the US, targeted the California State Water Board website, possessed stolen personal data, 4 million Facebook users, and held stolen usernames and passwords for services like Netflix and PayPal. So he'll spend 20 months in prison, and then he'll be back doing this all over again. What's that? 20 months. That's it. Okay. Terror sympathizer. Gonna add a terror sympathization charge there. Stick him in for 10, 15 years. Saying. UK falling down the slope they're going down, man. Slippery slope. This country may not be recognizable in a decade. All right. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, live with all the latest cybersecurity news. Until then, have a great rest of your day, y'all. And most importantly, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.